Hello and welcome to Mora Vocis. In this video, we are going to talk about the fundamentals of Gregorian semiology. Now, I know that you are probably really excited to learn about all those squiggles that you see above the gradual A triplex, also below, as well as those squiggles below if you happen to have a gradual I novum. And don't worry, we will get to all of that. But we first need to establish a framework in which to better understand those squiggles. Before we dive into those squiggles, we're going to talk about those elements that make up the fundamentals of Gregorian semiology. So the textual accent, different types of syllables, and what we describe as a musical modal structure. So let's get started. And even before I start to discuss the textual accent, one other very fundamental point is that you must understand what you are singing. I understand that as English speakers, and I'm speaking mostly to a native English-speaking population, Latin it might be kind of foreign to us. Now, for those of you who have studied Latin, that's awesome. You know far more about declensions than I do. That's why I rely on online translators like Wiktionary.com in order to better understand what I'm singing. But it is your job as the cantor to understand what you are singing so that that text, which is sacred scripture, can take on both an objective meaning as well as a subjective meaning, and so that you can transmit that to your audience. As then it really becomes part of you. It's fundamental. Just wanted to get that out there. And with that also comes this responsibility to be able to pronounce Latin well, which is why we're going to talk about the textual accent, right? It would be ridiculous if I were to speak like this in English, and we don't speak like that. At least we don't speak that normally. So a similar thing has to happen in Latin, right? We have to understand the textual accent so that it comes across intelligible to our audience. Okay. There are different types of accents in the Latin language. I should also mention, I use ecclesiastical Latin. I don't use classical Latin. I'm sorry. And I mostly use an Italian Latin, and I do throw in a little bit of Germanic Latin in. So I'm sorry, but I'm not going to go completely to Sanctus. It'll still be Sanctus. Anyway, with those disclaimers out there, we have the tonic accent. And no, this is not a gin and tonic. There's no alcohol involved here. Tonic accent just means the principal accent, that accent which is stressed. And that holds the inherent rhythmic fulcrum of the text. That's a lot. So what does that mean? That means that all of the energy goes towards this tonic accent and leaves it. You can think of it like a wave crashing upon the seashore. I love walking around the beaches, especially those in Wilmington, North Carolina. So I have in my head this concept of the waves that come in and go out. They come in and they go out. And they all revolve around that tonic accent. We have pretonic syllables. Those pull towards the tonic accent. There's an intensification. We're heading towards there. We get to the tonic accent, and then we have post-tonic syllables. Those release away from that tonic accent. They kind of soften what we just landed on. And we have the final syllable, which is self-explanatory. It is the last syllable of the word. There's a pull of relaxation there. Usually, we have a modally important note on that final syllable, as well as on the tonic accent. Not always. Again, a lot of this is contextual, depends on the chant, but you will oftentimes see this. All right, let's keep going. We have different types of words that have these different placements of their tonic syllables. Again, you can see understanding the text is imperative. We have oxytones. No, it has, yes, it does have the same root as like OxyClean, right? Single. So those of you who did grow up in the early 2000s with those infomercials of OxyClean, you do know what I'm talking about. Anyway, an oxytone is a single syllable word that has its own independence. What do I mean by that? I mean it can stand on its own. You have rex, vox, lux, and usually something like te. Prepositions are not oxytones because they belong to the word that follows. Think of a word like in or a, right? Like even in English, a preposition is just a mere preposition. They're very important, but they can't stand on their own. They belong to the word that follows. An oxytone can also be a word whose final syllable is the accented syllable. And in Gregorian chant, you are only going to see this with Hebrew words. Jerusalem, Alleluia. Though with a lot of these words, we have Latinized them. So I just wanted to put that out there and kind of think about that as a little aside. Then we have a paroxytone. It's going to be a lot of, starts to get a little convoluted just with the pronunciation here. So bear with me. That just means that the tonic accent, that principal accent, is going to be on the second to last syllable. Magni, Deus, Eternum. Right? And on that word Eternum, we have one pretonic syllable, e. Then we have the tonic accent, ter. And then you have your final syllable, num. And then we have a proparoxytone. I know that's a mouthful. All that means is that your tonic accent is the third syllable from the end. Imperium vocabitur misericordiam. All right, let's really look at that word misericordiam to give you a better idea of what we were talking about in the previous slide with the tonic accent and pretonic syllables, posttonic syllables, this idea of having poles of animation and relaxation. So you see that our tonic accent is cor, heart, right? That is the root of that, the heart of that word. Again, pun intended. We have pretonic syllables on mi, se, and ri, and those are going to intensify and lead us to cor. There's a little bit of a lift on it. Not, again, I'll over-exaggerate it once so you can get an idea. Misericordiam, right? We would never speak it like that necessarily, but you get an idea that that tonic accent has a little bit of a lift. It's important. There's a little bit of a stretch on it. And then on the post-tonic syllable D, we get a little bit of a soften, and then is definitely like a time of relaxation. Listen to me say it one more time, exaggerated. Misericordiam, right? So I'm not pronouncing every syllable with equal weight. We see this also in Gregorian chant composition. Not every syllable has the same amount of weight because its function is different. This is also, incidentally, another proof against menstrualism because this wasn't conceived of as music to be sung in twos and threes. It's driven by the text. Right, and I'll say the word one more time in a more normal voice so you can get an idea. Misericordiam. Right, you can kind of hear there's almost like this scuttling towards core, and then core blossoms, and then we just descend out of it very gently. All right, we're now going to talk a little bit about musical modal structure. I mentioned in the previous slide, we have this idea of a pull of animation and relaxation. All that means is that you have these points in chant where you have a melody that's being driven towards something and then relaxing off of it. We have structurally important notes that often highlight tonic syllables, not always. And you have unstable notes that pull towards tonic syllables. So essentially, you have this symbiosis between the music, the mode, and the words themselves. Let's take a deeper dive into what I mean by this by the antiphon Lux Aeterna. Lux Aeterna, luceatis nomine, cum sanctis tuis in aeternum right? We can see that there are essentially 4 small subphrases, which can then be divided into 2 larger, and then you have the entire antiphon that is an idea. This is in mode 8. So sol is going to be our final, do is going to be our dominant, right? Our second most important note. Even on that first word, lux, right, which is an oxytone, or on la, which wants to pull us down. Lux eternal. You can see even that small little subphrase wants to revolve around sol, right? You have la sol, fa sol, la sol, right? Everything's just revolving around sol. If you want to imagine like sine waves that are just going up and down around this singular pole. And then we end that larger subphrase on domine, also around sol, and we're revolving around that. But on lucea deis, we surge up to do, right? Those are important words. Light, we have this idea of light. So we start below near sol, and we surge up to the dominant, and then we fall back again on the word domine. Back down to the final. Then we have the same idea of surging up on cum sanctis tuis in aeternum. Again, we've got in aeternum. In does not belong by itself because it is a preposition, and you see that's on an unstable note. It's on T. In countries in Europe, you guys would say C. T, C. I can use those interchangeably, but for American English-speaking musicians, we use T. But that always goes to do. Look at that, and it does. So there's this symbiotic relationship between what the word's function is and the melodic notes themselves. And we get this beautiful descent quia piuses that again outlines sol. Assim cum sanctis tuis in aeternum, to the end one more time. Cum sanctis tuis in aeternum, quia piuses. So you can sing it yourself. I've highlighted the sols all in green. Then blue is do with the yellow, which is kind of faint. I hope you can see it. I've outlined your subphrases. And then the pink is the larger phrase. And then I didn't, because it got cut off. But if you want to imagine this entire antiphon as an idea as well. So I hope that this kind of cleared up a little bit of the fundamentals of Gregorian semiology. I know it's a lot. We have this idea of a pole of animation around structurally unstable notes here or melodies that move. So we've got that first even on that word lux, and then on lu, we have this idea of la as being this note that surges us somewhere else. And then on sanctis tuis, you've got this do, ti, do, la, ti, do business going on. So really, it's unstable. And we get this idea of a pole of relaxation around aeterna, domine, aeternum right there, and then piusas. This characterizes all types of Gregorian chant. If you have any questions, please feel free to post down below in the comment box or shoot me an email. I would love to connect with you and talk about Gregorian chants. I could talk about it pretty much all day long. So thank you so much for watching. Again, let me know if you have any questions.